Peter, and in this short video I'm going to show you how to design a simple Forf tank and let it compete against other tanks in an arena. What we see here are a number of tanks written in the language Forf, running inside a web browser, searching around in this field trying to find each other. Alright, if I reload you can see the battle. We start with quite a large number of tanks, and Ace May X is the winner in this particular battle. Okay, so let's say you want to design a tank like this. How do you go out and get started? Well, first of all, you need to go to the website specified in the email that you received, which may or may not match what I'm typing in right now. So you'll see a page like this. It might have some summary information or other images. What you need to do is click on the link here on the left-hand side called Tanks Debugger. And that'll bring up a window like this. And what you should do is get the token that you were emailed and put that token into the field here. The token is really a password for your tank, so don't share it with anyone. And then give your tank a name. I'm going to go with Monster. And here in the author field you can put your full name or your first name, but the main thing is to put your email address in case we need to email you your token. Alright, now what does our tank do? We can see a little image of our tank here, but why don't we run our tank and see what it does? So I click the Run button here, and this is a little demo test field. All these other tanks are robot tanks. They're not actual players, and they just give you something to chase around. So every time I click Run, it reruns this field. And you can see our tank is this gray tank, and it kind of drives around in a slow circle. It spins its turret around. If something runs into its front bumper, it's going to try to turn, and if something runs into this turret field, this very skinny slice of pizza, it tries to shoot, as we just saw. So we can change everything about this tank, starting with the color. So down here, this is where the tank is actually programmed and designed. So let's start by clicking on this color swatch and pick a color that's a little more interesting and a little more visible. Okay, so I'll go with bright yellow. Alright, now our tank is yellow. And again, let's describe what this tank does. Okay, it drives around in a sort of slow circle. It tries to turn if anything runs into its front bumper. It tries to shoot if anything runs into this turret sensor field. And I think that's it. So let's look at how the tank's programmed. There are 4 commands in this tank program, or 4 lines rather. The text on the left are the program instructions, and on the right the text in these parentheses are comments, so you can understand what's going on. So the first thing we want to talk about is how the turret rotates. We see the turret spins around, and what we see is the first instruction says get turret's position, get turret, then the number 12, and then plus, and then set turret. So what this says is get the position of the turret, then take the number 12, add the number 12 to the position of the turret, and then set that as the new value of the turret. And we're all familiar with sort of 1 + 1 = 2 as a way of talking about math, but we can also use something called reverse notation, where you would, instead of saying 1 + 1, you'd say 1 1 plus. And that's what Forf, the language, uses. So this says get the turret position, take 12, add that together, and set that as a new turret value. And 12 is just an angle. So just like in simple geometry, your angle can go from 0 to 360. And so that's what makes the turret rotate around. Now if we wanted the turret to rotate backwards, instead of adding 12 to the current position, we could subtract 12. So I changed the plus to a minus, and I hit run, and now you notice the turret is spinning around counterclockwise instead of clockwise. Okay, so the other thing we notice about our tank, or one of the other things, is that it kind of lists in a leftward direction, right? It's not really going in a straight line. And that's in this line here, 3740 set speed. So we're familiar with this reverse notation, but is it setting the speed to 37 or 40? Well, that's sort of a trick question. Set speed takes the previous two values and sets them to the left and right treads of the tank. So if you think of a tank, it has treads on the left and treads on the right. If those treads aren't moving in exactly the same speed, the faster tread is going to go faster and then push the tank in the other direction. So 3740 says the left tread is going a little bit slower than the right tread, so it's going to slowly turn to the left. And we can tweak this and play around with it. So for example, if I set it to minus 100, 100, that's the full range. So minus 100 is full speed backwards and 100 is full speed forwards. We expect and we see that our tank just spins around in a tight circle. Okay? If I set it to 100, 100 set speed, now our tank is going to drive straight forward as fast as it possibly can. Okay? What about shooting? Okay, the tank fires anytime anything ends up in its front sensor. Well, its front sensor, the one that's spinning, is the 0th sensor. So 0 sensor question mark says, is there something in the 0 sensor range? Again, that's that spinning sensor. And if there is, then the text inside the brackets here, these commands are executed. So if there is something inside the turret sensor, then fire. And then we say if at the end to specify that this is an if statement. Now we also notice that if there's something in the front bumper, our tank tries to turn. It kind of swerves out of the way, or at least it tries to. It's not always very good. And that's in this fourth line here. So one sensor, meaning the front bumper, if there's something in the front bumper, then set the left tread to minus 50 and the right tread to 50, which is going to cause it to turn, and then set speed. So we can make it turn even more dramatically by setting it to minus 100, 100. And if I hit run, we may or may not get a chance to see it try to turn. Okay, it has to run into something, of course. Well, we're not being favored with an opportunity to try this out, but rest assured, should something show up in this front sensor range, the tank is going to try to swerve out of the way. Okay. Now, we'd really like to maybe make our tank a little bit smarter. Right now it only has two sensors, the turret and the front sensor. Well, sensors are defined over here in this sensor box. So each sensor is defined by 4 properties. The range of the sensor, which can be from 0 to 100. The angle, I'm going to set this back to 50. The angle, which specifies where on the tank the sensor is oriented, and the width of the sensor. The width can be anywhere from effectively 1 degree to 359 degrees, okay, which would be a full circle essentially. Currently our sensor 0 is set to 50 because that's the range of the tank's cannon. The angle is locked to the turret. That's what this 4th checkbox does. So if I uncheck it, the turret just sticks straight forwards. If I check it, then the turret is locked, the sensor is locked to the turret. And the width is 7, so we're pretty sure that if there's something in here and we fire, we're going to hit it. And then our front bumper is defined as a range of 30, angle of 0, meaning straight ahead, and a width of 90 degrees. Okay, let's make our tank a little, give it some more sensors. Okay, so I'm actually going to extend this all the way out to the full range of 100 with an angle of 0 and a width of 90 degrees. And I'm going to give it 3 more sensors all the way around all 4 sides of the tank. So the second sensor is going to be our right hand or our east sensor. So its angle will be 90 degrees and we'll also set its width to be 90. And our third sensor is going to be the southern sensor, our rear sensor. So again, a range of 100, an angle of 180, meaning right behind us, and again a width of 90. And our fourth sensor will also have a range of 100. Its angle will be 270, or the west or left-hand side, and its width will also be 90. And then finally, I'm going to add another turret-locked sensor. Its range is going to be 100. Its angle will be 0. I'm going to make it a little bit wider than the other turret, and then I need to lock it to the turret. So now let's test out our tank. If we hit run, we see we have all these sensors, but the tank's behavior isn't really changing. And that's because the program that we have doesn't actually do anything. Okay, so we need to add some lines of code to modify how the tank behaves. And while we're at it, let's make the tank a little bit more aggressive instead of running away. Okay, so one sensor is our first front straight ahead sensor. So if there's something in the front sensor, let's just set both treads to 100. We're going to go straight ahead. And now we need to add some lines for the other sensors. Now sensor 2 is our right hand sensor, our east sensor, if you will. So we want to turn to the right if there's something on our right hand. So to turn to our right, we need to make the left-hand tread push us faster than the right-hand tread. So I set it to 100 minus 100. Now our third sensor is the sensor that's directly behind us at 180 degrees. So if there's something behind us in our third sensor, we want to spin around as fast as we can to try to catch them. So I'm going to set the speed to minus 100, 100. Now our fourth sensor is our left-hand sensor. So we want to do the opposite of our right-hand sensor. If there's something to our left, we want to turn towards our left side. Okay. Now we have this extra turret locked sensor. And what we want to do here is, if there's a tank out here that's in our sensor's line of sight but isn't close enough to fire, we just want to keep the sensor right where it is instead of rotating it. Okay? So what we'll say here is 5 sensor, question mark, and then we'll use our old friend get turret to get the current turret's position, and then we're just going to set the current position to the next position. Okay? So now let's test out our tank and see how it works. Oh, I made a mistake. Now I didn't even plan this, but that's a good example. You see here, error, no such function set turret. That's because the function should be set turret with an exclamation point. So if your program stops operating, it's probably because there was a bug, and it should tell you what the bug was. And now if I go down here and I change set turret, change the question mark to an exclamation point, now when I run the program it should work. So our tank's driving around, it's turning to try to find targets, it's firing when it reaches them, and it's not the smartest tank in the field, but it's doing better. Okay, so now we're reasonably happy with our tank, right? So now we want to submit it so it can fight against the other tanks. So we've already put in our token, our name, and our email address. So I click submit here, and it says, okay, tank submitted. So now, once a minute, my tank is going to compete against all the other tanks in this particular sandbox. So where do we go from here? So you've seen how to program a tank, how to create and modify sensors, how to make code that behaves based on the data available in the sensors. Well, the first thing you might want to do is read the introduction. So if you click on this introduction link, this covers over a lot of the information that I've breezed right through in this short tutorial. Okay? And next, you probably want to read the Forf manual, which is actually the manual of the programming language Forf that drives the tank. I showed you how to make a very simple tank, but you can read about this to make your tank a lot smarter. In particular, you can save information from one execution to another. So for example, if I wanted to say save the tank's speed or save whether it recently saw something, I can use special things called registers, and those are described again in the Forf manual. So if you read the Forf manual, you'll learn how to use registers. And then after that, you can look at the tank's procedures document. And the tank's procedures document is really handy. It tells you all of the commands for controlling your tank specifically. And we've seen set speed, we've seen fire, we've seen get turret and set turret. But here's a new one, fire ready, ? And the tank can only fire every so often. So fire ready is a way of finding out if our tank is actually ready to fire. Okay, so if we go back to our program code and I look at this here and I say, well, if I can't fire, then I don't want to drive straight towards an enemy. Maybe I want to drive backwards. Okay, so what I can do is I can actually nest these if statements. So I can put another if statement inside this statement. So I use the command fire ready that we just learned about, and if it's fire ready, then I will go straight ahead. I'll try to get that guy. But now you see I'm making another a nested set of a nested condition, and what I'm going to put in here is -100 set speed. So what we see is if fire ready, then I'm going to go straight ahead with full steam ahead, but if fire isn't ready, then I'm going to go backwards. Okay, -100 and if else simply says instead of just a single if condition like in this case, we actually have two conditions, the if condition and the if not condition, or the if else. So let's try to run that, and we may or may not get to see this behavior, but you should get the idea that if the tank can't fire, we can change its behavior and have it do something else. Okay, so actually we saw the tank backed up right there, just as we hoped. It tried to fire, and then after it shot, it backed up. Now in this case it didn't, because it hit that tank, so there was no one left in that area. Okay, so now that we've made this change, remember to resubmit your tank. Okay, now if I actually want to look at the summary page, I can go up here and I'll open the summary page in a new tab, and we see a long list of matches that have been happening. So if I click on match 35, oh look, I can actually see my tank duking it out against other tanks, and I didn't do so well this time. But how about match 34? Well, I did a little bit better. Match 33. What's going to happen is after a while there will be summaries showing how the tanks performed against one another. All right. Now what about quitting and coming back? If I go back here to the tank's debugger and I'm done, and let's say I go home and then I get a great idea and I want to modify my tank. Well, go back to the site, click on the tank's debugger, and you see we have that blank tank again that we started with. What you need to do is put your token in, again, the same token. Don't give this token out to anyone, it's like your password. And now I don't click submit because I don't want to save this, but I do click retrieve to load the tank that we submitted. I think I typed it in incorrectly. Aha, there we go. And there's our tank just like we left it. And now I can modify it, make it do something clever, and hopefully it'll do better in the races. Okay, I think that's it. So thanks for listening, have fun, and I'll see you in the arena.